I'm not sure exactly how I did that.
Okay,
but,
trustees, we are recording. We are live. Phone lines are open. You're good to go.
Welcome, everybody, to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Trustees of November 8th, 2021. I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Like,
of the United States of America and to the republic
which
for
is
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Arlene, could you do roll call, please?
Sure. John Aldred,
Here.
Francis Bach,
Here.
Ben Dollinger,
here.
Rick Drew,
Here.
Tim Garneau,
Here.
Jim Grimes,
Yes.
Mike Martinson,
Here.
Susan McGraw-Keeber,
Here,
and Bill Taylor.
Okay. Let's start with public comment. I believe we have Mark Mendelman.
Yep, just give everybody a second.
Okay.
Just up.
Yes. Hello?
Hello, Mark.
You have to mute your device, please.
Can you hear me okay?
You have to mute your.
You have to mute your device, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, Mark. Peter.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start with Mark Mendelman. Are you there, Mark?
his voice is muted.
Yeah, Mark. Are
Hi,
you there,
everybody.
Mark?
Yes.
How are you tonight?
Good. How are you, Francis?
I'm good.
So,
Peter, do you want to join in also?
pardon?
Does Peter want to join in also?
I'll just be listening, unless I need to talk.
Okay. How you doing, Peter?
Very good, thank you.
All right. So, Mark, you want to talk about 10-year maintenance permit on bulkhead repair,
Yeah.
dock
So
repair and dredging?
this is for the Harbor Marina, which is at the end of Gann Road. We've applied for a long-term maintenance permit, basically to replace pilings, fix floating docks, and any piers, replace bulkheads, and when we replace them, raise them 18 inches. Reclamation dredging 10 feet out from the bulkhead, which typically happens when you replace the bulkhead. We've applied to the DEC, who has deemed piling replacements at least no permit necessary, or NPN, and provides marinas with 10-year maintenance permits, which is what we've applied to the DEC for. The trustee application is exactly the same as the DEC application. Nothing in the surveys is going to change as a result of anything that we do. This is all maintenance. During this off season, we plan to do maintenance on our fuel dock. We're replacing the fuel lines and the dispensers with new double wall lines in the dock and new dispensers with sumps underneath them, which is a great thing. And then we also have to repair our travel lift piers, which have several pilings that have been necked down or completely eliminated by worms, and basically that's almost an emergency repair, as well as several pilings that have broken off or are so necked down that they're not safe anymore in the marina basin itself. So that's kind of the plan for this year. Long term, we do have bulkhead replacements that need to be done. We have some remaining CCA bulkhead that we've patched over the years. We don't know exactly when we will have to replace that bulkhead. Never know when it's going to go through, when it's going to wash out or have a hole, and we'll patch it at that time. But those larger replacement projects are down the road. We'd like the flexibility from the trustees to be able to perform these maintenance activities over a long period of time. And we'd like you to consider providing some sort of long-term maintenance permit for these activities for an existing marina.
Mark, do we now have like a 5-year permit with you on that?
At Harbor Marina, the last time that we applied for a permit, I think, was in 2014, and we had it was basically a cut and dry. This is the project. We're going to replace some bulkheading and some travel lift piers, which we did, but we've done a maintenance type of a permit at 3 Mile Harbor Marina down in the southern end. But nothing at Harbor Marina. So this is a new application for Harbor Marina.
Okay.
Ultimately, it would be good to have something similar to this across the 4 marinas we operate. And I think if there's something that an existing marina, any existing marina wanted to do maintenance generally, I think it's a good thing to have the flexibility to do it over a longer period of time.
Mark, it might just be worth mentioning to the trustees as well, the way it works with the DEC and the way we've had it working with the trustees is there's always a notice given to the trustees when maintenance is actually performed and a notice when it's completed. So it's not like a complete carte blanche for 10 years. It's hey, this is what's there. This is what's expected to be maintained. And it just makes the process a bit more efficient for the trustees as well as for the marinas in that what maintenance is expected is understood ahead of time. And if there's an emergency, like which happened towards the end of the season at Harbor Marina when a piling broke between 2 boats, we didn't replace it, but it would have been nice to be able to get a barge in and put a piling in if it happened halfway through the season. Fortunately, it was only a couple of weeks from the end of the season and we just moved the boats elsewhere. So that's the concept, continuous communication with a pre-agreed upon plan, basically.
Peter, would there be annual reporting to bring the trustees up to speed on the goings on or projects throughout the year?
Yes, that's the concept. Yep.
Thank you.
Ben and I met with Mark and Peter at the marina last week, and my understanding of the process is that, as they've said, we're being presented with work that they're interested in doing over a 10-year period. And each year before any work begins, we'd be presented with what they would be doing that winter season, or that year, I should say. I think with respect to the 3-year project at 3 Mile Harbor Marina that Mark discussed, that was a given set of projects that was expected to take more than one season, and we gave them 3 years to complete the different aspects of that project. So this is, similar to that, just expanded out to 10 years, as Mark said, to dovetail with the DEC 10-year permit. So I think this is a workable concept. I think we might want to give this a little time to percolate through the board and discuss about how we would craft this, what fees we might incur, if in fact we want to give a 10-year permit, or maybe we want to break it up into 2 5-year permits. I mean, just some of these little housekeeping details, I think we might want to think about for the next 2 weeks, and maybe revisit this at the next meeting and come to some kind of an agreement at that point.
Hey, Mark and Peter, Jim Grimes, do we have an application presently for this 10-year permit, or you're coming here tonight to feel us out on this?
You currently have an application for the.
Okay. Is this comprehensive work, is it described, and is there some sort of a timeline described in the permit application itself?
Yes, to the idea that there's a comprehensive plan for the maintenance, but no to the specific timing of the.
Okay.
Specifically the bulkheading. That's the one that we really haven't put a date on, so to speak.
Okay, but we've got a set of proposed plans for these. Correct. For the bulkheading, up-to-date surveys that we're
Correct.
working off of and such. Okay.
Jim, there is a description of work that they're interested in undertaking over the coming year.
All right. So if this is something that's not going to be voted on tonight, John, could you distribute that to the other board members so that everybody's up to speed on this and prepared to vote at the next meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks.
And Mark, did you say you guys already have approval from the DEC for the 10-year maintenance permit?
No, the DEC just came back to us and asked for 2 copies of a survey. So that went out Friday and was delivered on today, Monday.
Okay.
And Mark, just for the refresh my memory, I thought you said you were going to approach the ZBA with some kind of a similar request.
Correct. I would expect to go to the ZBA for basically an administrative natural resources special permit for the travel lift piers and the pilings. And the travel lift piers would be even on an emergency basis. In terms of a long-term approach, the natural resources special permit, I believe, has a 3-year window to perform the work without renewal. But I'd have to check. I'm not 100% sure.
It's worth noting a couple of things. We're not asking for a vote tonight, clearly, but it would be helpful to, especially for the travel lift pier and the fuel dock, which need to start work. The travel lift pier won't start work until Grimes brings his barge into 3 Mile Harbor, which will probably not be until, December or January. And the fuel dock work has been approved by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, which has a department that manages everything fuel related. And we do have permits, correct, Mark, from them for that. It is a massive cost, and it's a substantial upgrade in the safety of the existing systems that are there now. We are going from single wall pipe from the bulkhead out to the dispensers, or single wall hose to double wall hose, which will make, currently the existing system is double walled fiberglass tanks, double walled pipe. down to the bulkhead. But once you get beyond there, it's single wall, which has sufficed for 30 years, but it's time to upgrade. And the new dispensers will be electronic. There'll be many more sensors in the system to monitor for any potential of leaks. Any leaks will go down the secondary containment into the sumps underneath the dispensers and be alarmed and monitored so that if there's even a drip, we'll catch it fairly quickly and be able to remedy it. But it's a project that needs to be done. And I think our hope is that we're actually going to start removing some of the docks. Our gas dock is going to go out of service this week, so we can try to meet our timelines, and we're going to pull everything out and basically start working on it on land, so that we can hopefully have it back in time for the spring.
Well, Peter, I think you can expect our board to be pretty prompt in turning this around.
Yeah, no, we're not trying to put pressure on, just trying to be informative. Yeah.
All right.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, so it sounds like we have a plan.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great
All right.
night.
Good night.
You guys.
All right, next on the agenda, we have Rich Briley on behalf of the owners of 19 Chauncey Close, Suffolk County Tax Map 301-15-106. An update on temporary construction dewatering project, a report from the engineer. Are you there, Rich?
I am here.
You have some other people with you you'd like to introduce?
I don't know if they've been let in. I was hoping to see Regina Bykoff from PW Grosser, Paul Boyce, another engineer from PW Grosser.
I'm here, Rich. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Paul.
I'm also here.
Hi, Regina.
Hi.
And also Kyle Allen from Chesterfield.
Yes, I'm here.
Kyle
I don't have a working screen.
Okay. So Kyle is the project manager from Chesterfield who built the system.
Okay.
And I guess I'm here, Francis, to field any questions along with the engineers.
All right. Well, can we, I mean, that engineer report is a little difficult for some of us to read.
Yeah, it's a little tricky for any layman.
Yeah. Could we just get some kind of a rundown on it? Just a quick synopsis, maybe?
Would you like to take that, Regina or Paul?
Yeah, Regina, you want to take the lead on that, or you want me to?
I can do a quick rundown.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Okay. So I have two screens up, so sorry if it looks like I'm looking in every direction. So what we're requesting in this letter is to be able to discharge temporarily to Georgica Pond during dewatering operations, not all of the time, but when there is maintenance that needs to be done to the diffusion wells, which would typically be 3 days per month, or when the dewatering rate to discharge, the groundwater elevation rises above 4 feet, which seems to be the critical elevation of groundwater, where the diffusion wells start to not operate as they're intended to operate. So that is actually the really quick summary of what this letter is requesting. If you have any other specific questions, I can go through the data a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, Regina, it's Rick. How you doing this evening?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. So with those two parameters of 3 days per month and groundwater elevation at 4 feet, you did present a lot of charts and graphs showing the history that apparently seemed to have changed from the pre-project analysis to the post and during project analysis. Do you have any projections
You still want the salmon?
as to when or how much
No?
water?
Hold on one second. Arlene, can you mute, please?
I just took care of it.
Thank you.
So do you have any calculations or projections as to how many gallons of water will be going into the pond for these durational periods? We originally had information of 600 gallons per minute, and we, assumed at that time it was continuous, which seemed like an awful lot. But, we got information that that's not the case. But I think it would be helpful to have some idea as to what the volumes are, particularly because the testing Dr. Gobler did showed that the levels of nitrogen and phosphorus in the water were 20 to 25 times higher than the surface water in the pond, and that is concerning. So, at very small quantities, maybe it's not that bad, but, we have worked pretty hard for the past 6 years to reduce these levels, and we don't want to be kind of paddling upstream here. So if you could help me get my head wrapped around that a little better, I'd appreciate it.
So during the times when they're doing maintenance on the diffusion wells, for those 3 days every month while the dewatering operation is happening, it will be the full amount, 600 gallons per minute to the pond. When it's just overflow, we predicted that it would be approximately 50 to 100 gallons per minute of effluent directed to the pond. I don't know, Paul, do you want to explain a little bit more because you did the modeling on that?
Yeah, sure. What we did to come up with these estimates was three-dimensional numerical groundwater modeling. And again, I'll try to keep it as straightforward as possible. I know the report was, a little technical. So when we ran our numerical model, our math, as Regina was just pointing out, once the groundwater elevation starts to get above that 4-foot mark in terms of above mean sea level, we would need to send some flow into the pond for a sustained period. We were looking at maybe up to 100 gallons a minute. And again, when we looked at, we gave you some charts, historical data, where we monitored pond levels. We also had a monitoring well on site, which monitored groundwater levels. And groundwater starts to exceed 4 feet, obviously, once the cut gets closed up, which is sometime, usually it looked like it was end of March, early April.
Okay. Hey, Paul, just to bring you up to date, the pond is presently tidal.
Correct.
Okay. So it's open right now. So
Yep.
I'm assuming your levels are workable within your original modeling at this time?
100% correct. Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, the pond level's down around like 2 feet, right? So groundwater is at like 2.2 or 2.3, well below that 4-foot mark.
All
so
right.
Right now, it's not a big deal for us. Once the cut closes up and the pond level starts to rise, and so does the groundwater level, that's where we'd see an issue. Which
all right. Right now, I think what you can expect is if this thing tracks the way it has the last 3 years, I think you can expect that pond will probably stay open up to into January. And even if it closes in the interim, the pond, we'll be doing our dredging work in the pond, and that work is done with the water low. So if the water is high, it will be let. And some years they've actually done the dredging work with the pond tidal and just worked around the things. But I think one of the questions that may be asked here is there was some modifications made a few weeks ago on your settlement tank, actually closing it up to light. Has that had a measurable effect on the maintenance? And that may be a question for Kyle.
Yes, it has had an effect on the maintenance. So what we found was that with the sediment pond or the sediment tank being open on the top and the sunlight coming in and the environment that the water was in, we were seeing a lot of algae growing within the tank. Not so much where the water was actually moving through the center, but on the sides. And then that algae was essentially getting caught through the filters, clogging up the filter bags. And what was getting through the filter bags was then clogging up the wells as well. And it's the only time of year that we've seen it since we've started the pumps in May, I believe. So since we covered up the top of the tank and not let the sunlight in, we haven't seen that being an issue. And Rick, back to your point, when you had mentioned that Gobler was out there doing testing, I would probably think that that's why there was a high nitrogen if he had just taken the sample out of that tank at that time, because of all the algae that was growing in there.
Okay.
And then also,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. So, and back to your point as far as the amount of water going into the pond. Back when we had that nor'easter 2 weeks ago now, October 26th, I took it upon myself to just take a look at what the pond was doing in relation to the rainfall. And I think we got a total of almost 3 inches of rain, 2 3/4 inches of rain at the East Hampton airport. And over that same period of time, the pond rose by almost 6 inches. It was 5 3/4 inches rise in the pond, which of course affects the groundwater levels as well. But then if we were to run a quick calculation to see how much the pond would be affected by pumping even 1,000 gallons per minute into it, and let's just say it were a giant concrete pool and not a pond that has evaporation or drainage or the ability to open up the cut, but just a giant pool the same size as the pond is now, it would take us 30 days of pumping 1,000 gallons per minute into the pond to see the same amount of rise in the pond that we did from the just over 2 inches of rain that we did in that one day. So I know when you're looking at numbers and you're saying, wow, 600 gallons a minute or 1,000 gallons per minute, it can be daunting when the only thing that you have to reference is a 5-gallon bucket. But looking at the numbers that way and how big we have, I think tells quite a telling story. And not only that, but, I was lucky enough to be on the meeting when Judy Weiss was on there, and she was going through all the fertilizers and everything that can pollute the water through the runoff. The water that we will be pumping in the pond is filtered 3 times, essentially first through the sand, through the well points that we have, through the sediment filter tank, and then through the filtration system before it goes back into the pond. Whereas the rainwater and runoff and what you have there, as you know, comes through off the fertilized lawns and what we have coming off the roads. So I figured that was just a strong thing to share on that end.
Okay. All right. Kyle, thanks. This is Rick again. I just have really 3 points to share, and I'd like to turn it over to some other members of the board. The DEC originally approved a project plan that was ultimately not successful. And, I just feel that they shouldn't just be handing this off to us. They should be part of this process. And they've been a little radio silent. So I'm a little frustrated by that, but I will reach out again to Helen Chang, the engineer from the DEC. This is the first time a dewatering project of this type is being proposed for a trustee water body, and it will set a precedent. So we do need to consider that. And, the nitrogen levels were tested quite a bit higher. If you feel that data is incorrect, we should have Gobler tested again. But at 20 to 25 times the level of the pond surface water, it is contrary to all the work we've done to try to reduce this. So it is something I'm having a hard time getting my head around. So I want to be supportive, but at the same time, our responsibility is the best interest of the pond. And a lot of people have done an enormous amount of work to try to get the pond's health improved. And we've all been supportive of that for 6 years. So I would, like everyone to, consider that. And if we can do some type of treatment or more filtering to make the water quality better, that would be a home run in my estimation. So if the engineering team can say, look, we can put up a temporary permeable barrier and it's going to improve the quality, well, by all means, please put that foot forward. It's something I would certainly embrace. So that's really all I have at this end, and I'd like to open it up to everyone else. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is John Aldred. I have a couple of questions. My understanding, and I may be wrong about this, but let me know if I am, is that this process works like this. The water's drawn out of the ground around the foundation. And then after it goes through settling and filtration, it's pumped back into 3 large discharge wells that pump it into the groundwater. And whatever flow exceeds the ability of those discharge wells to accept the water overflows into that sort of dugout area farther to the south. And then you're looking for that to overflow into the pond if that rises to that level. So far, is that basically correct? Am I correct, or am I missing something?
Just about, yeah. So we're actually looking to pump from some of the time to pump from through the filtration system, bypass the wells if they need to be worked on, or if the groundwater's above 4, and then pump directly into the pond. It wouldn't be going into the recharge basin and then into the pond.
Okay, so my question basically is, the system was designed to accept the flow back into the groundwater in those 3 large discharge wells. And I'm assuming you understood the groundwater levels in the area in different pond conditions. So my question is, would additional discharge wells be able to accept enough water without having to go to an overflow situation?
They could help alleviate the situation, but we'd have to spread them out, and I think we're limited on site in terms of where we can put the wells with regards to like wetland setbacks. We don't want to get it too close to the foundation, so there are some constraints. We did look at doing additional wells, and it just was not a whole lot of room to put them in.
When I visited the site, I was struck by how close they were to the whole area of pumping pumps.
Yeah, so the way it works, John, is right. We're pulling the water out of the ground. It's shallow groundwater, and the return wells are like 100 feet deep. So we're trying to put it down and use a vertical gradient to help us prevent that water from coming right back into the excavation.
Yeah, I understand. It seemed to me there was quite a bit of room to the, I guess it's to the north or maybe the east of where the settling tank is now, with the wells adjacent to it. That was, part of the construction site, that at least 3 more wells could be stuck there. It seemed to me. Is that not the case?
No, not really. I think the way that, as it is, the system is squeezed into the available area. Even the recharge basin was undersized slightly due to lack of room. So that, and I believe that study was done as far as adding an additional diffusion well, and there just wasn't any room. They have to be spaced a certain distance apart, and it just wasn't going to work.
Hey guys, why are we concerned about setbacks to the wetlands if we're not concerned about setbacks to the pond? Could someone help me understand that concept, please?
I don't understand the setbacks to the pond.
Setbacks, we're not allowed to put these wells in or discharge the water near wetlands, but yet we're asking to discharge the water directly into the pond.
Yeah, because that's more of a construction. We have construction equipment as opposed to just running water into the pond. That's the difference. So we're not putting any construction equipment beyond the allowable area.
So it doesn't have to do with environmental impacts of the water quality or anything. It has strictly to do with the equipment.
100%. Yeah, well, any kind of environmental impact, I believe, would have been addressed by the DEC.
Yeah, we would have to drive I apologize. We would have to drive a machine into the wetlands and a drill rig at that, and then drill 90 feet into the wetlands, which is a huge no-go in the world of the DEC.
Well, that actually, guys, that area is a scenic easement. All right, so you're not really going to get a permit to walk into that scenic easement. There's specific language to it that's part of the original subdivision approval that prohibits any of the stuff that's described here. Hey, Kyle and Paul, would there be room along that, I'm going to call it the easterly property line? I'm going to say over by where you have your Porter Labs right now for any additional well points.
Part of the reason we put the wells where they are is they're kind of like, if you will, seaward of a lot of stuff. If we go closer to that east side where there's other properties, the DEC has this constraint about raising the water table a little bit. If you come up within 2 feet of someone's basement slab or something.
Okay, so you have setback issues, side yard or proximity issues to the neighboring homes?
There's certainly that, but it's what I'm really trying to explain is when we put the water in at the diffusion wells, the return wells, we create a mound. It's going to come up a little bit. And if we could put it closer to the, like I said, the seaward side or the water side by the pond, as opposed to neighboring properties, it's the DEC looks on it much more favorably that way because we don't raise the groundwater below someone's house because that's closer to where we're actually suppressing it with the dewatering operation.
Okay.
Is there the possibility to do some more treatment of the water in a more space efficient manner? Paul, could you help me with that?
Yeah, so if you're looking to do like nitrogen removal or nitrate removal, that's a difficult operation to do. I mean, I know you're talking about permeable reactive barriers, but for us to try to build something like that and force 600 gallons a minute through, it's going to be a pretty substantial system. My question is, and again, maybe Rich or Kyle can answer this, when Dr. Gobler came out and took his sample, was the cut open or was the cut closed when he got the pond?
It was open.
The cut was open.
Yes.
All right, so that's a good point. Because once it opens, and you guys know it becomes tidal, it flushes out, and tide comes in and out, right? So you get this, whatever was in there may have drained out, and we've gotten a lower nitrogen concentration compared to what's in the groundwater. Because that pond, when the cut's closed, it is receiving groundwater, and the same nitrogen that's in the groundwater we're proposing to pump will be the same groundwater that's making its way to the pond. Yeah. When the pond's open to the ocean, it does flush out.
How long is this project going to continue?
I'd leave that to Kyle and Rich to answer.
Well,
We're projecting 5 months.
So, I mean, the pond is probably going to be open.
Can I fine tune that question, Bill? I was going to ask a similar question. The question is, how long will the pumping need to continue before, until the foundation is sealed enough not to need that?
Yeah, it's basically, how long do they need to pump? It looks like the pond is most likely going to be open for another three or 4 months.
So the construction will probably run about three to 4 months. And since we're working now into the colder months, we might need every bit of that 4th month, being as the weather being so unpredictable, especially through February. But yes, so if the pond remains open and the groundwater stays below that, say, 3.5 and 4 foot mark, there won't be the diffusion wells won't need that relief. So this is something that we're only asking to be able to do should the diffusion wells, become stressed. And we have gauges that tell us when that happens. And what we found is that when the groundwater gets around 4 feet, then that's when that happens. So that's the only time. And even when that does happen, we'd probably need to pump about 100 gallons a minute. The other time when we would need to do that is for maintenance on the diffusion wells. And that happens, I mean, we're estimating once a month. I don't know if that's going to be the case. What will happen is the diffusion wells, once again, will let us know when they're not pumping, and we'll need to redevelop them. During that time, we would have to shut down the system, and in doing so, it would essentially flood the excavation. If we had an outlet, we wouldn't have to shut down the system. We can pull the diffusion wells, redevelop them, basically clean them, put them back, and that takes about 2.5 days to 3 days.
Roll up the 3 of them?
Yes, they do all 3 at the same time. So this isn't a constant, wouldn't be a constant thing of pumping into the pond. It would only happen under those conditions.
No, but you need the ability to do this if you get in a situation, or else you're going to ruin the job, right?
Exactly. I mean, I've lost some confidence in these diffusion wells, so we need a backup plan if they fail, or if they become stressed. I wouldn't think they would completely fail, but they could fail to the point where it could hurt the construction.
Yeah.
At what point do you decide that this part of the project is finished, and then you go to the actual construction of the residence?
Once the walls are up, we would wait a lot of 23 weeks or so for the concrete to cure. We'd backfill up to that point and turn the system off.
I think you meant 23 days, right?
Yeah, approximately 3 weeks or so. Yeah, once the concrete's fully cured, we can backfill.
Hey guys, and one possible thing, that was brought up earlier on by Rick and by you, Rich, is when Goldberg's office came in and did their water sampling, they did it from the settlement tank, which at that time was open on the top to the air. I can tell you factually, I was working on the property then. It was somewhat sunny, dry, windy, and there was a considerable amount of particulate matter blowing around there. Any soil particles that were falling into that settlement tank could potentially have skewed your water quality numbers. And, I think for everybody's purpose here to better find this more comfortable is to find out whether those tests were actually accurate for the water that was being pumped out of the pond. Because I didn't even think about it, but the water samples were not taken at your well points. They were taken, basically, I described it as somewhat compromised portion of this process. And it may truly, it may truly be real that that's what the nitrogen and phosphorus numbers are there. But you know what? If having that tank open impacted those numbers, and if in truth they are lower, it may help to mitigate some of this board's and the DEC's concerns on this.
Then are you suggesting that the test be done again by Gobler?
Well, I would suggest that, listen, I got to recuse myself here from any votes. But if I were, my request would be that the applicant ask for some independent testing, perhaps by Gobler. I think he's a credible agent. We use him, But frankly, I don't think that's something that's going to be borne by this board.
You know, I think getting a second shot at the testing makes a lot of sense, Jim. I think it would help to qualify whether or not there's a real concern there. So I would encourage the applicant to do so. And I think Dr. Gobler would be a willing participant in this. He's been a good partner, and he has, I think, a big vested interest in the pond and this work that's been going on for many, many years.
Yeah, because all I can tell you is from my own personal experience, we build a lot of ponds, and we've been on sites down in Sagaponack, Wainscott area, where you're building a pond, you've got a lot of dirt blowing around. It's not being put in the pond. We're very careful to set up grades that no surface water runs into a pond. But it's amazing how quickly that can instigate an algae bloom. And the only reason that's happening is it's adding nutrients. You know, you've got light, you've got water, and you've got nitrogen and phosphorus. And we may have found a situation similar to that here. At this point, the outer areas of this site are all secured. There is no dirt blowing around. The area's all been planted and seeded. So this could potentially be a completely different animal than what we're discussing right now.
Yeah, I think we need new nitrogen tests as quickly as we can get them. And if you're pumping groundwater to groundwater, there shouldn't be a huge variance, which there seems to be.
Well, let's see what happens. You know, and the other thing is, Rich, did you get any feedback on getting a hold of Ms. Helen Chang from the DEC, or should I give her a call tomorrow?
I have not heard back from her.
Okay. I'm going to go after her a little more aggressively to get them to weigh in. I think it is fair, you know, since they were the lead agency on the original permit, to at least hear from them. If they want us to go first, that's possible, but I think they should at least kind of weigh in a little bit here.
Yeah,
they approved the original permit.
I'm interested to hear as well, and thanks for the input on the water testing. I'm going to defer that to Paul and Regina. I believe they have worked with Dr. Gobler as well. So
we have.
Okay, great.
Yeah, if the work is projected to take 3 to 4 months, which I think is what I heard. And the dispersion wells are working when the pond level is at sea level. Could we keep the pond open all winter and therefore avoid this whole scenario?
Through a possible second opening, John, if necessary?
Well, I think we've done a second opening.
Well, John, you know, John, right now, John, right now, as far as a typical year, okay, we let the pond for the second time on November 1. As of yesterday, it was still open. It was flowing nicely on a tidal basis. I'm going to say, even if that let heals at this point, if you look at the typical average rainfall, and what we're really talking about is basically a month and a half, 2 months, in all likelihood, we would probably not see the water level of the pond reach the level that Paul and Regina spoke about earlier. And in either case, somebody's going to be letting that pond, if it's not let again, in order to facilitate the dredging. So I think we've got the remainder of this month. I'm going to call it 2 weeks. It's a little bit more than that. We got the 4 weeks leading up to the holidays. Okay, so that's really 6 weeks. And then we're probably only 2 to 3 weeks before we're going to see activity in there on the dredging. So we're at least 2 months right now of lead time where that pond's going to be open, where the water levels are going to be patently low. And in all likelihood, if the pond is not open for March, we open it. Okay, so we're looking at 3 to 4 months ahead of us right now, that pond in all likelihood is going to either be tidal or going to be significantly lower than it was back on the 15th or 18th or whatever day it was in October when we first let it. And at that time, the pond was, what was it at, Paul? I think you guys probably had the data in front of you. Was at between...
Yeah, we do. It looked like the first time you guys... Yeah, it looked like it opened towards the end of September, and it was up around almost 5 feet in the pond. It dropped down to almost zero. Then it started to gradually rise again till looks like the end of October, where it got closer up to about between 3.5 and 4 when it was opened again, and then it dropped back down to under 1, and you can really see that it's still open. You can see the tidal fluctuations, daily, up and down with the tide. So it's going in and out. So it looks like it's open. It's under 2 feet for the most part, probably closer to 1 on an average.
I mean, if those conditions remain, that would be ideal for us. And
well, I think right now, guys, I think you can pretty much count on that.
I'm going to need some form of a backup with those diffusion wells, just to have that there if we need it, sort of thing, because any compromise to the diffusion wells could be catastrophic as far as construction goes. So it's sort of a plan B, only if we need it.
Let me ask you this. Are you using all 3 of those diffusion wells now with the pond level and your pumping rate, what they are currently?
Yes. So the 3 diffusion wells are set up with a single manifold. So the water is equally distributed into those wells.
Do you need all 3 wells? In other, I guess what I'm driving at is, could you, at this level, at this rate, could you pump into fewer than 3 wells and then have a regular cleaning schedule for the screens or whatever's down there on the wells that aren't in use, and try to, rather than just using all 3 and then when they clog up, you got nothing?
I'm not sure. I'd have to defer. Kyle, I don't know. Is there a way that we could basically clean 1 well at a time and keep the other 2 running?
No, excuse me. No, we explored this originally, and each well is developed for just about 330 to 350 gallons per minute. So we need all of each well to get us to the goal, to get the water level down to where we need it for critical construction inside the excavation.
Well, look, I like Jim's idea, and I think we should pursue follow-up testing to confirm or deny the results that have been presented thus far. Let's get the DEC to step up a little bit, and let's try to, bring this to some kind of closure here, maybe, at the next meeting if we can.
That'd be terrific.
Anyone opposed to that, or any other thoughts?
No, I agree. And I think the DEC's input is very, very important here.
Yeah. So Rich, let's both go after the DEC a little bit, all right? And try and get some feedback.
Sounds good.
All right. I'll check in with you later this week. See how we both did.
Great.
You want that? Maybe have the board write the DEC a letter, or write.
Well, hey guys, the original reason that the DEC pushed this back towards us was not in a typical sort of lead agency fashion. It was pushed back on us as the owners of the property that the applicant's looking to discharge the water on. Okay, so the DEC, in all likelihood, was not willing to push the application forward if the I'm going to describe it as partner or neighbor was unwilling to have that done in the first place. So I think what we're really asking DEC for is somewhat of an opinion or feeling on the impacts that this might have on the pond. It's not that we're kind of lead agency here.
And Jim, that has been requested. So we did ask for a memo or an opinion, and we just haven't gotten
but it's a little. it is a little atypical of like an application that we would handle in conjunction with the DEC. They're actually looking to us for direction, because if we say under no certain conditions or is this board willing to allow any discharge, well, it's a dead issue for the applicant here.
Let's try to find some middle ground and see what we can do at the next meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
we're good.
All right. Anybody have anything
Thank you
else?
for your time, gentlemen.
Okay. Thanks, Rich.
Everyone.
Thanks,
Rich.
to everybody. Appreciate it very much.
Excuse me. All right, so let's move on to new business. Nat Peak, we have a request from Marion McMahon, tenant at 241 Shore Road, lot number 16S in Lazy Point, to renew her sublease to her daughter, Marith McMahon and Thomas Thorson.
I'd like to make a motion, if all of the paperwork is correct, which it does seem to be here, that we approve this.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Francis, I'm just going to recuse myself as my wife is a leaseholder at Lazy Point.
Okay. Move on to 3 Mile Harbor. An application from Hampton Waters Property Owners Association, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-92-6-8 to construct an elevated walkway with untreated wood and open grate decking off Oyster Shore Roads to 3 Mile Harbor. Now, that's alongside the pond that's there? Is that?
Yeah, that's next to Oyster Pond.
Okay.
It's a little marsh area south of the pond and west of the main harbor. The walkway, we discussed this at the last meeting, I think, a little bit. The walkway crosses a marsh. The proposed walkway will cross a marsh, which currently is being skirted around the edge with a path, and it goes off the property. So the proposal is to put a walkway directly across the marsh, which would stay within the property lines of the Hampton Waters Property Owners Association access to the harbor. It looks to me like the survey they provided does have some elevations on it, one of which is 0.9 feet above.
Hi, Dr. Blumenthal. It's Susan McGraw-Keeber calling. It is 7:30 p.m.
Susan.
I took care of it. Keep going.
Okay. Thank you.
So one of the elevations is below the 1 foot contour line, which would indicate that part of that marsh at least is below mean high water. And that could indicate that we have jurisdiction. So we asked them to file an application with us. They have, however, not completed the natural resource special permit process. I'm not sure if they've applied yet. I believe they're in the process of applying at least. So I just propose again that we hold off on this to see what comes of the NRSP process.
I think that makes the most sense, honestly, right here. Now, John, recognizing ZBA's attitudes towards projects that are either entirely or significantly in our jurisdiction, this could very well get kicked back, and we could find ourselves inadvertently being the lead agent on this. And if we are, it probably would be in everybody's interest to distribute the information about this project to the other board members so that if we have to have a more intelligent discussion about it, we're just not dealing with something that's being relayed by members of the committee.
Sure. And then, John, there was a DEC permit that's set to expire in 2022, correct?
Right, at the end of 2022.
Was that a 10-year permit they had?
They got it 9 years ago, yeah.
Now, what is that permit for, guys?
It's for a 4-foot wide by, I believe it's 118-foot long walkway elevated 4 feet above the marsh. And I know that the ZBA discusses whether they would like it 4 feet above the marsh or lower. So that's one reason I'd prefer they kind of hash that out.
Well, I don't know. The only comment I have on this is if the boardwalk is passing through an area as you described in the intertidal zone, it's our property. I don't really know how the DEC can issue permits on an application on property that they don't own unless we were either the applicants or we signed off on it.
Well,
I think John and I were unclear.
What about the McGinn dock? I mean, they got their DC permit before we decided.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
John, wasn't it questionable if it was intertidal where they want to put the walkway?
Well, that's why I kind of went through the whole elevations explanation.
Mm-hmm.
There's been discussion that we claim jurisdiction to mean high water. And mean high water, in the interpretation of the local surveyors, at least David Saskis, who I spoke to about this, and who I believe did this survey, that's their criterion for determining the mean high water mark, is the 1 foot elevation. So we claim to mean high water, part of this marsh is below that. Now this marsh is cut off from the harbor. Somehow the water gets in there. I'm not sure how. I haven't walked around and found the outlets. It either comes in around a dune from Oyster Pond, or it comes in through a marshy area from the main part of the harbor, or it may feed in through some kind of a pipe and ditch system that you can see in the marsh, but it can't really find in the adjacent areas.
John?
There's wetland vegetation in there and standing water and elevations that indicate that it would be below mean high water based on the surveyor's criteria.
John, there's a couple of ponds along Oyster Shores Road. Do you know which one it is? There's one over by Island Road.
No, it's almost at the northern extent of the Oyster Shores subdivision.
Okay, so when I look at that on a Google map, it looks like there's an actual cut across the beach into that pond. Into
Oyster Pond, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
This area we're talking about is south of that pond. There's Oyster Pond, and then there's like a raised dune area, and then it dips into this wetland marsh.
Yeah. All right.
And they estimated it would take a week to 10 days to construct the walkway.
Is there an opportunity here, Ben, to actually relocate this walkway above mean high water? The portion that we're discussing here, that's just not an option.
I'm not sure that's an option. Like there was quite a bit of water in there when John and I were in there. And John, do you think that was tidal or just?
Yeah, that was tidal. That was a very high tide day. That's the day we visited Harbor Marina.
Mhm.
Remember how high the tide was?
Yeah.
You know, it was a moon tide, I think.
There's super tide, I think, this week, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Over the past week, it's been really high and low.
John had on his muck boots. I had on a pair of dress shoes, and so I didn't go quite as far as he did.
Yeah, the confines of the property are fairly constraining because all they have is I'm not sure how wide their access, pathway is, but it's maybe 20 feet wide, something like that, 20, 30 feet wide. So if you head, right now, as I said, the path around this marsh, you can still, it's still kind of wet, but you can traverse it at most of the tidal cycle, but it takes you into the neighboring property. I'll distribute the information, and then we'll see.
Hey, John, do you think this is going to help protect the wetlands by minimizing foot traffic in different areas? Can it be elevated, like, some type of a catwalk so the vegetation can grow underneath it?
Well, I think the proposal, Rich, is for a flow-through deck material, so light does pass through it. And at 4 feet above the marsh, it does allow stuff like quadrupeds and stuff to
Yeah, I think those
get underneath it.
Those DEC standards do allow for growth underneath.
Great, thank you.
And I think having a walkway there would definitely be less invasive than people trampling around, following the highest, part of the area.
And if you have to stick to the confines of the property owner's property, there's no real alternative other than walking, through wet marsh.
Great, thank you, John.
Anybody else on that?
And if I could just say one other thing about this is that, this is access for, not the general public, but the people that live in the association. So it's serving more than just a single property owner.
Is this thing supposed to go along the existing pathway that I can see?
Not really, because the existing pathway veers into private property out of the easement.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the purpose of the walkway was to keep everything within the easement and have it more straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Right, John? We tried to sort of map it out when we were down there.
Yeah, well, the survey shows that how it curves around out of off the property and into the adjacent property.
Mm-hmm.
But there doesn't seem to be an actual beach along that portion of the pond. It's kind of weird. It's like the northern portion has more of a beach than the southern portion. So I'm not quite sure what they're trying to accomplish.
Well, actually, if you continue through the marsh towards the harbor, you come to a sort of a dune, a rise. And there's vegetation and cedar trees, and then there is a narrow beach. And actually, there are some kayaks that are kept there, and some that are still there, seemingly abandoned, which I had to notify the homeowners association about, try to clean that up.
All right. Okay, thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Old business. We have the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee update. I think it's you, John.
Susan?
Well, I'll just say good evening, John. You can take it over from here. And I do have a map that I can put up to share. So while you're describing this, John, John comes to the meetings and is very helpful, knowledgeable. So we went up to Louse Point the other day to look at this particular project that is being considered for CPF funding. So I will put the map up, John, if you'd like, so everyone can see what it looks like. Okay.
This was the first thing on the agenda, which is the it's a proposed project as part of the water quality portion of the Community Preservation Fund. It's called Accabonac Harbor Stormwater Abatement at Louse Point. And this is a concept design prepared by McLean Associates. So what you're looking at is basically the road end at Louse Point and the parking area there to the right of the road. And I'm assuming most of you are familiar with that area and know that there's a lot of erosion that's taken place. Some of the fencing that separated the parking area from the vegetation on the inlet side is sort of, eroded out from under. And so the proposal is to basically move that fence area back about 20 feet. And
that would be this area up here.
Recreate, fill that area in with sand and plant it with beach grass. That's sort of the green shaded area, the northernmost green shaded area. And currently the parking area, that's not, not the road part, but the parking area to the right, it was just sort of bare earth, probably had some kind of a surfacing on it many years ago. But recently, it seems as though I believe the highway department put some asphalt millings down, graded it out, flattened it out, and put asphalt millings down there. So it's actually a pretty nice surface now, but it's asphalt millings. And I think this project came to the Water Quality Committee because somebody felt as though those asphalt millings were an environmental problem. So we had a big discussion about this at the committee meeting. And there were some, the proposal is to, in addition to working on that northern area and moving the fence back and defining the access to the beach, both on the bay side and the harbor side, the proposal mainly was to remove all those asphalt millings and replace it with crushed stone. So there was discussion about this. Susan and I went down there on Friday and kind of took a look at things and came back with, some feelings that we relayed back to the committee. One of which was that if this proposal goes forward with considerations, we feel there has to be a really strong environmental need for this, and that case really has to be made. And I haven't heard the case being made yet.
The concern from some of the residents, and one in particular, was that the asphalt millings could create a runoff problem and go actually into the harbor or the creek side. So when John and I looked at this, we did not feel that would be an issue. And if you see along the right-hand side, that is supposed to be a bioswale construction and it's already a deep cut with lots of growth there already. So we are hesitant to really consider this a CPF funding project at this juncture, but it may well turn out to be, because the amount of grass that you see at the front end of those would be natural grasses. They discussed maybe Rosa rugosa. This plan also calls for a closure of 2 areas that are used for people to pull up with their kayaks and so forth. So this is a preliminary plan, and one that is still under consideration, and everyone's submitting suggestions and thoughts about it at this juncture. But I thought it was an interesting project to explore, and we'll see where we go with that. There are other projects that we discussed as well, but this one is at the forefront at the moment.
What I don't understand is, I mean, right now, we get a really good storm and the end of the road actually falls off onto the beach and ends up in the channel area. It never fails. How
that's something.
Actually, if you look at the old aerials,
That beach has come back hundreds of feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, how is grass supposed to hold up?
I believe that it was discussed that this plan would call for sand to be brought there. Am I remembering correctly, John?
This
and then they
is
would
probably
plant the seagrass.
This is the 4th or 5th time they've done this, and
I don't know what the alternative is, but I guess the main point here is that the fence where everybody pulls up to, it's got to be pulled back. Again,
yeah, well, that's because it keeps.
The fence will just disappear, and cars will just.
It won't be the first one,
right?
And there's been that beach is that parking area has, like all our other parking areas, received an incredible amount of use since the COVID thing. So you're probably going to lose. Are they going to be losing parking area here?
20 feet, I think, is what was determined from this survey.
It didn't seem as, we looked at it based on, how much the fence would move back. It loses 20 feet, but it doesn't seem as though it's a significant enough loss to be of any great concern.
Yeah.
And like I said, what's the alternative? We're going to lose it one way or another.
Yeah, those millings are not attractive. Who would they pay for the bluestone? I guess
beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
I don't think they want to put bluestone there. It's probably going to be local courts. There's no issues. I don't think there's any real issues with those asphalt millings. Other than the fact that they're somewhat unsightly, that could possibly be working as a base graded and
cover them up.
Actually, if you go and take a look at it, it blends. The color of it blends very well with the old tarmac road that leads up to the end of the beach. Which, by the way, the road, as you know, continues past the rail, and it just cuts off. It's anybody who would drive past that through the fence would fall off.
Yeah, because the road was
millings
originally out
right now are the color of dark charcoal.
Yeah.
One consideration here is the expense. According to Stephen Lynch, this is what was discussed in the meeting, Stephen Lynch felt as though it would be a significant expense. And he felt as though the maintenance of the stone surface would be significant and relatively expensive over time. So, the question is does this qualify for water quality funding?
More than anything else, more than another project.
It's.
Again, it's the runoff that was of concern. That these millings would create a runoff problem for the waterways.
I thought the grade actually went the other way there. I thought it went to the south, but maybe
it does. It does, and there's some proposed grading that would direct water back towards the bioswale.
All right.
And also what are they called? The mats to make it easy for the public to have access if they were wheelchair bound or disabled?
Yeah, the part of the project proposal is to direct the walkways to the bay side and the creek side, and then put those mats like they have at Main Beach, those handicap mats that you can walk on from the parking area to the path. So that was the first project that was discussed. I think the second one is, there were four. The second one is really the only other one that's worth, I think, discussing here or pointing out here. That was Sag Harbor, a request by Sag Harbor Village to fund an engineering design for home hookups from street to the structure as part of their sewage extension project, which has been approved from the standpoint of the pipes in the street. The question now is the hookups from the pipes in the street to the houses. And there's a certain amount of engineering that has to take place so that the people in the houses have an idea of what it's going to cost them to hook up. And the proposal is to use some water quality monies to do some of that engineering. So there seemed to be some incomplete information with that request.
I think it's 33 parcels and the unit cost, and I wrote down is 1,250 at but I believe that the issue really was that they were not sure of the cost, so they didn't really know how to approach the homeowners and where is the cutoff for which homes are able to have this set up. So I think a little more planning is what is necessary before this can become a reality.
What's necessary to determine a cost per hookup is a full engineering assessment of where the pipe has to go, what's in the way, what kind of, what does your drainage system look like, where does it go, where are your cesspools. Some of this engineering study that's proposed wouldn't be able to see those, for example, buried cesspools, and it wouldn't look for them. So the question was, well, if it's going to be an incomplete engineering assessment, is it worth undertaking? Because the homeowner is not going to really get a good picture of what it's going to cost them to hook up until the full engineering is done anyway. So where it was left is that there'll be a call with the engineers to try to better understand this at a future meeting. So this is something that isn't really complete yet. And then there were two others were just sort of housekeeping timeline discussions about when requests for funding are submitted and when the responses would take place. And then some language about code changes to the septic code that would just clean up some of the language. Well, actually, it was discussion of minimum wetland setbacks for natural resource special permit waivers. If you have a minimum, if you don't have much room, there's a setback necessary for your septic, 150 feet, I believe it is, from a wetland. But many properties don't have that, so they can get a waiver based on the amount of distance they actually have on their property. If it's not 150 feet. Some people have been asking for these waivers with when they've been replacing their septic system with the IA system, and in some cases it seems as though, the interest is really not to have to move the IA system back, basically leave it close to the wetland where the original septic system was. So there was discussion about that, and that will also be revisited at a future meeting. And those were the items. So we'll send that drawing, that engineering proposed plan of the Last Point lot, so you can take a look at it and compare it to an aerial. Get back to us with any input you may have. We can bring back to the next meeting.
I will send that out to everybody.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Before we go to the next one, Matt, do we have anyone waiting on the lines?
We do not. You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Captain Rysam Fund, trustee baseball hats. Susan. Susan, are you there?
Hello?
You there?
Where did Matt go?
We're all ears, Susan.
Oh, are you
Can you hear
speaking to me? I didn't hear anybody. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Right. Rysam Fund.
Okay, well, I'm going to be really brief. Rysam Fund Scholarship, in order to raise more funds for our scholarship fund, we have designed a lovely navy blue hat with embroidered East Hampton Town Trustees on the front, and on the back established 1686. So Francis and I and Arlene and Allison all voted on the lettering. It looks really swell. And so we will have those shortly. Chris Carrillo, baseball hat coming your way. They should be here shortly. So we will be selling those to help raise money for the fund. And the other thing, I had put this on the list and it was not, it didn't make it for some reason, but I just want to pop this up. I picked up our signs. Oops, can't see that. I'm sorry. So I'll just do this, I guess. Can you see this? Share my screen with you. We have our new sign, and those are now in the office. They are aluminum. Oh, screen share. It stopped. Okay. Well, let me do.
We saw it.
We saw it.
You saw it? Okay. Well, good. So it will be out.
I saw them live. They're nice.
Good. Okay. That's all that I have, and I'm going to have to say goodnight. I have to leave early, but thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Nice, Susan.
Bye.
Hey, Susan.
All right. Next up is Striped Bass Study. Tim O'Rourke.
Yeah, I don't think Tim's on here tonight. We reviewed a proposal for a research project for Lake Montauk a month or so ago. And basically the question was, are we willing to vote to fund this?
Right, and didn't we defer to the town, Jim, for a little bit? Did they ever?
We did, and I'm going to be honest. Unfortunately, I have sent several messages asking our town supervisor to give me a call on this, but as of late, those calls have not been answered.
Okay.
I
think there's a general support for the study. I just thought we wanted to make sure the overseeing agency was on board.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping to get a match, quite honestly. I thought we had been very generous to perhaps fund this in the manner that we discussed, and I hoped that the town would share our enthusiasm.
So you were proposing what, 10,000 a year? Is that what you?
Actually, I think it was 25.
25,000 a year.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken.
For 2 years.
For 2 years, yes.
Okay, to find out if there's,
And if the town reciprocated, well, then they would be halfway to their goals. And
now, have they applied for any other grants?
I do not know that.
Okay, because if they're not applying for other grants, I think we're just spinning our wheels.
I agree.
Could we maybe just give this one more meeting cycle and really try to hit the town and get an update on other grant writing and bring this to a vote next meeting?
I totally
Get
agree.
to some closure. Is that fair, Jim?
I think that's very fair.
All right, everyone try to contact someone you know on the board and just get an answer.
All right. Committee reports, harbor management, the dock update from the subcommittee. You guys get to meet?
We did get to meet. We had a long discussion about this, Bill, myself, Rick, and John. And I thought the consensus was that we were going to ask for a 12-month moratorium on our water bodies for any new docks to basically put together a better review of where the trustees are going to stand on this. Now, I think, John, was there any language written on this?
No, we haven't really written any language. I think we discussed the moratorium being on docks or any floating structures and in all trustee water bodies.
These are new docks and floating structures, correct?
New docks.
Yeah.
New docks.
Hey guys, I actually am on call tonight and I have an ambulance call. My only comment on this right now, John, what you're talking about looks like we're trying to put hunting out of business. So we've got to exclude the duck blinds.
Okay.
We need this if possible. All right?
Okay.
Got to roll.
Floating.
We should define floating structures a little more.
Guys, I'm going on this fire call myself. So I'm going to excuse myself from the remainder of the meeting.
Okay.
Hey,
How many does that leave us? One.
Well, I think our idea was to bring this to the board and outline what we talked about and come up with something in writing to vote on next meeting. So all docks, floating structures, excluding duck blinds, 12 months, and all trustee waters. And the purpose of this is to find out where we're at, inventory what we have, determine what's legal, illegal. Make recommendations at the end of the period. The only thing that's outstanding, and I think this might take a little while into the period for us to understand better, and this is what the issue of removing or leaving in place piling. So that I'm not sure. That's one thing when we're talking about this moratorium and coming up with a policy on that. It's another thing with regard to the permit conditions that we have to consider for the dock that was just approved. I don't know if this is possible, but I would prefer that any permit condition on that dock, on the McGinn dock, obviously be consistent with whatever policy we come up with. But I'm not sure that allows us to write that condition into the permit at this point. And like I said, I don't know if that's
But you're proposing to take a year to consider this. And once if you spend that year, so are you saying that we're not going to write the conditions for the dock until the end of this period?
What? No, I'm not saying anything. I'm raising the question, I guess. What it is over the period of the year. I mean, may not take a year, but there are docks out there that we're not sure what the conditions are. We need to know. Let's say there's 50 docks or 30 docks in 3 Mile Harbor. What are the conditions on all those docks relative to removing pilings or not removing pilings? I mean, they may all be the same condition, but I have a feeling they're not all the same. So we have to see what's out there and then determine what our policy is going to be. And that's going to take time. I mean, just the mechanics of how we're going to do this dock analysis is significant. And we've got to look at all the harbor, and we've got to sort of divide up this work and make sure this work gets done.
Right. No, I understand that. Hey, Chris, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So we have 2 weeks now between meetings. Can we not accept any new applications for docks between now and then? Are we allowed to do that?
If the goal is to have this moratorium, I think, by the time we pass it, we can have a retroactive moratorium in place going back to today or whenever we need to. So if there are any applications in the meantime, I think we have a means to exclude them if we want to do it retroactively till this meeting.
Okay.
But I'm a little confused by John. What I just wasn't exactly following. I think we need to be clear that we have a permit in place that needs to pass and move forward, irrespective of any future policy decisions. So
yeah, because
I think we need to keep those separate as best as we can. I understand your concern about pilings and policy, but we do need to keep those two things separate.
Well, I think everyone needs to bring their best case forward on pilings or not, or, best research information to the next meeting so we can memorialize this, or, at a committee meeting this week, John. I think we have to hash this out for at least this application.
Yeah, everything's ready to go.
Chris, can you jump on a call this week if we need to do this?
Yeah.
John, are you okay with that? Bill?
Yeah. But, I mean, in all these cases, I think we have to move toward, that maintaining the stability of the pilings is the homeowner's responsibility. And
let me ask
the best way to do that might be, there's several methods, and I think it's going to be case specific as to whether taking them out, having them constructed to withstand the stress of any possible ice or storms. Those are kind of decisions that the homeowner should have some input into.
Okay, but we're not going to have that conversation tonight. Right now we're just trying to figure out how to get from A to B. That's going to be part of the conversation over the next
year
period
or whatever.
So
all right, we'll meet, Francis.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I guess one of my concerns about this particular situation is if we allow the McGinn pilings to stay in, and then we come back and feel as though pilings should be taken out. Well, that's that.
What about,
Let me just finish. However, if we put the condition on the McGinn pilings, or at least some of the pilings, that they be taken out, and then we determine pilings should be left in, they don't have to take them out after that.
Maybe there's a way to word it, John. Let's talk about it this week.
Okay.
Three Mile Harbor, update on property of Eugenia and Edward Tillinghast, 19 Will Curl Highway, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-94-1-12, an application for bluff stabilization.
So John and I met with them last week. We sat with them for a couple hours. And I think at this time they're not withdrawing their application, right, John? I think they want to go in a different direction from what was very close to being approved.
Yeah, they expressed the desire to go in a different direction. I think Ben and I tried to advise them to keep this up. This is a core log and bluff revegetation application, basically. They feel as though they want to go with something more substantial. So bottom line is they're interested in going in a different direction. We advise them to keep this core log application on the back burner in case, information they got or advice they got while pursuing something else made them change their minds. So
they have over 3 years invested in the application process, and they're one agency away from approval. But I think they're just hesitant. They don't want to experiment with their own money to see if the core logs would actually work. And they're just not convinced that they will work. So they would I think they'd much prefer some type of hard structure on the bluff.
They're going to have to start over again then, right?
Oh yeah, start over from scratch. Yeah, with a new engineer, new plan, new everything. So
I guess we'll put this one on the table. Table this application
Till further notice.
Yeah.
Further notice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have anything else before we move on to administrative?
Well, I got a couple of things. Dr. Gobler put out a temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, continuous reading, monitoring meter probe, Nappy Harbor this summer. And they went back to retrieve it last week and it's not there. So I'm trying to put the word out to anybody who is on the water in that league, particularly baymen, and hopefully baymen can talk to other baymen. If they see a buoy, a round white buoy with some markings on it that indicates it's from SUNY, State University of New York, Stony Brook, to let us know or let Dr. Gobler know. Barley is going to hopefully go around the harbor tomorrow and take a look and see if he can find anything as well.
That's too bad.
That is too bad.
May I say something?
Sure, Allison.
John, I have a good amount of contacts for all of our mooring permit holders. Would that be appropriate to send an email out to all of them to ask or see if anyone has seen anything? Would that be an appropriate thing to do?
That would be helpful. Yes, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. If you send me, if there's any more detailed information that you have that I need to incorporate into that email, just send it to me and I can get that out tomorrow.
Okay, I will. And one other thing, the period for applying for the special permit for powering ended on the 5th, on Friday. And one bayman misunderstood the legal notice in the paper and thought that the last date for filing was the 8th, and it was actually the opening date for the powering period. And he's asked if he could make an application based on that honest misunderstanding of the legal notice. So
I'd make a motion that we grant him the permit that he's applying for.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
That's it for me.
All right, anybody else? All right, let's move on to administrative. Payment of the bills. We have East Hampton Marina, $796.46 for winterizing a pump out boat. Optimum, $152.06. East Hampton Business Service, $54 for a bathymetric survey copy. And Montauk Anglers Club, it's the amount's pending, so we don't need to do anything with that.
That was a space holder. I'm sorry, nothing there.
Do I have a motion to pay the
I
bills?
make a motion, we pay the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, thank you. Insurance settlement. Intact insurance, pump out boat damage to another boat. There's a $1,500 deductible due from the trustees to the boat owner. Do I have a motion to pay that deductible?
Motion to pay.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll get that out. Financials ending September 30th. Anybody have a chance to look at them?
Francis, I did look at them and they do appear to be in order. I did notice some of the Lazy Point lease revenue was down a little bit over last year, which is odd if there's a 2% escalator every year. So I don't know if there's some timing issues or catch-ups or some arrears, but that was something that stood out a little bit. But overall, the financials look good and they carry forward month over month. I also looked at the October 31st and they appear to be in good order.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve them.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, thank you. And finally, we have minutes for August 9th. Anyone look at those?
Yeah, I did. I believe Susan did as well. We submitted our comments. I'll make a motion. We accept those minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there's also a set from September 27th.
Same thing. We reviewed them, submitted our comments back to Allison. I'll make a motion. We accept those minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, we have October 15th.
Ditto.
Okay. The motion is to accept.
I make a motion. We accept.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Francis, I think you missed the October 31st financial. I just heard you talk about the September 30th financial.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, anyone have a
Francis,
chance to look at?
I did look at the October 30th as well. It did appear to be in order, so I would make a motion to approve it.
Oh, yeah, didn't you? Okay.
I'll
Is there
second.
a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Unless anybody has anything else, can we have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.